Welcome to another episode of Nintendo Ninja News, episode 3, and this is all about Monster Hunter 4, A Noob's Journey. As you know, Monster Hunter 4 was released in Japan on September the 14th, 2013, and Monster Hunter 4G Ultimate, which is the version that we received here on Valentine's Day this year in Australia, February the 13th for America and Europe. And Japan received that Ultimate version on October the 11th, 2014. Monster Hunter, the series, has been a huge success in Japan, making millions of sales each time that it's done over its time. Now, obviously, Monster Hunter started its life on another console, on a Sony console, and slowly it's been moved over to a Nintendo exclusive. But you never know, it may go on the Vita or the PS4 or even the Wii U in its future. Capcom is doing a survey asking people if they would like to buy the game on another console. But that's another story for later on. So, my journey into Monster Hunter 4 was interesting because I knew from past games that it was a very hardcore game. It was very hard to get into. There wasn't a huge storyline to it, and it was a game that throws you into the deep end. So there wasn't much an appeal for me in that. And the interesting thing about Monster Hunter 4 was that Capcom addressed and fixed a lot of those issues. Did a tutoring session on it that they added, and they brought in some sort of storyline for the Monster Hunter that you become. And obviously, in the game, you take on the role of a fresh hunter that undertakes quests, challenges to hunt dangerous creatures that inhabit various locations. Obviously, the game is about taking on these quests and locations and hunting these massive giant monsters. For those who have not played this series, and these battles last for a good 10, 20, half an hour, maybe even more if you're like me who's still learning the game. And the depth of the game is huge. Various items, of course, in-game money and other rewards, which requires you to craft weapons and armor from the monsters that you slay or kill. So there's quite a bit of depth into this game that I felt that was really interesting. And the interesting thing that I found with Monster Hunter 4 was how much easier it was from comments from other people about getting into this game. And I think that was the thing that made me sort of buy it. And, some of my friends were buying it too, and I was interested to see how this would go for me into this game. To give you an idea of the depth of weapons that you can craft and create or even buy in the game, there's such ones such as the Great Sword, Sword and Shield, Dual Blades, which is the one that I use because I normally use quick weapons to get into, Hammer, Hunting Horn, Lance, Switch Axe, Insect Glaive, Light Bow Gun, Heavy Bow Gun, Normal Bow, and I think the Long Sword that I forgot to add in there. And those weapons gives you different varied tactics in terms of fighting monsters and that. Range, close combat, large weapons such as the hammer, which gives you massive attack, but obviously your movement is decreased. So from a noob's point of view, it is still a bit of an intimidating game in terms of the monsters and the fighting that you had to do. And I started off with the Sword and Shield, getting into that in the first quests. And I will say that this is a game that has to be played with an extra control stick. Because I think one of the more important aspects of Monster Hunter is defending yourself and moving around the monsters, because this is not a game where you just go in and just start hacking and slashing. And I learned that very quickly when I was using the Sword and Shield. and it just wasn't working out for me against the first few monsters. It's also important, I believe, with the armor, which there's so many armor pieces to discuss about, that you build up some sort of defense too with added features and things like that. But going on to the different monsters and the controls of it, that I feel like this game has to be played with the little C stick that comes with the new 3DS, or if you have the normal 3DS XL or the original 3DS model, that you go get the Circle Pro pad that is sold separately in your local stores or secondhand somewhere for about $20-$30. And it was important for me to move around and learn about the movement of the actual hunter, because I was hacking and slashing at first, and what I learned from it was that it's better to move around, and it's almost like playing a boxing match. You know, you don't go in and start punching these enemies left, right, and center. You pick and choose the time to attack, and you take the opportunities when you have them, because they may be the only opportunities you have against these monsters. I also felt like that it was best to move around to the side of these monsters and sort of hack and slash them too. If they're going to make a move based on what type of monster they are, and each monster has their different characteristics and what they do, and I felt that that was important to learn their habits and what they do, and just quickly move and dodge out of the way. And when those opportunities present themselves, is to go in and slash with the dual blades is the one that I use, because I feel that they're a lot quicker and easier. I think the downside to them is it does really open you up to the monster, where they can attack you pretty hard back. I just wish that there was some sort of weapon, and I think there is. Remember, this is a noob's tale, that allows you to sort of do more long range firing and still allow you to go out and hack and slash when you need to. And that's something that I may explore in the game yet. I have played probably over 60, 65 hours of this game, so I've put in quite a bit. It's not quite to the levels of Smash Brothers or Pokemon, nowhere near Mario Kart or Animal Crossing for myself, but it's definitely making leaps and bounds for me. So with that, those are the certain areas that I've learned about Monster Hunter 4. That I think the important thing is picking armor that has good defense, a weapon that you feel comfortable with. There's no weapon that's better or worse than each other, and it really depends on how you normally play these type of games, these action role play games. If you're better with dual blades or the hammer or the lance, or if you just want to try a weapon that's interesting. And I guess that we're moving on to the quests themselves, and they're pretty interesting, some of them. I'm up to HR4, which is the Hunter rank 4, and I am starting to see the difficulties of the game. There was some tense moments so far in the storyline of the game that I felt was a little difficult, and I just upgraded a weapon, or I tweaked the play of it. But it is starting to get to the point where you really do need to think about going into the quest and picking the items that you take, the cold drinks and the hot drinks, and building up your mega potions and bombs and capturing these monsters, all these different little tactics that you got to think of. So it is a bit of the a thinking man's game or thinking woman's game, where you need to really work with yourself and learning how these different monsters react. I think the annoying thing that I find is that because I do the hack and slash a bit with the dual blades is when you get knocked down or you get poisoned or something like that, and those precious few seconds when you're using a mega potion or antidote, and you're trying to quickly use these items, and sometimes it's a bit slow, so you've got to run off to a corner, or make sure that your kitty friends, the cats that you use in the game, I know there's an official term for it, but they're really just freaking cats that you have in the game. And this is for the single player, that where it takes a good 4 or 5 seconds to use a potion, and it just frustrates me when you use a potion and then the monster charges at you and just knocks out the health that you just regenerated for yourself, and you just felt, well, that was just a waste of time doing. So I think that's something that I'm still trying to work out, and it is quite annoying. So I think as these monsters become more difficult, I think defense is going to become more and more important for me, to make sure that I have an armor that can and will play well for me. And there'll be added features such as, resistance to lightning and fire and ice and water and things like that. And that's areas for me to look into. The online experience I found was lots of fun, playing with friends online, and with my local group, the Canberra Street Pass group, and it's a lot of fun dealing and working with other hunters who are a much higher rank, because you feel a lot more safe when you're around them, because you know that if something goes wrong, they can step in and take care of that. And what's the interesting thing is that I think that they all take different turns in sort of managing the monsters and that. And I'm predicting and guessing, as the monsters get harder and you get up to the high rank and the G rank, that the different hunters that play in the multiplayer will take on different roles. 1 or 2 might be hacking and slashing at it. One might be doing long range firing from a distance. Another one might try and mount it from jumping up from high above. Or if it's a capturing monster, someone will set the trap, or someone will try to lure it to a certain area of the location that you're set in for that particular quest. And I think that's an interesting thing too. And it does help you get items and armor and things like that too. So there is a way for lower ranked people to learn about the game. And what I did when I started multiplayer with a couple of people, John, Mark and Nikolai, the ones that have been showing me how to do this game, that was my first experience of multiplayer, was I just sort of sat in the background and just watched how they played the game. And it was interesting how they just sort of took turns knocking around the monster. And there was probably a bit more hack and slash from the higher ranks, because they can afford it. They have the good armor, they have the good weapon. There's no fear factor against these low-level monsters for them. And I think that will apply for me too. I find that capturing monsters is an interesting challenge. I'm not particularly a fan of it because it can get difficult, but I sort of appreciate the difficulty of capturing a monster, especially if you're a high rank hunter going against a weaker monster, because that would be hard not to kill it. And sometimes when it starts to limp and move away, it does become a little difficult to try to grab its attention and try to set the trap, especially if it moves into another area. So for me, the online experience has really been about sort of watching how things are played, how other people play the game, looking at the range of weapons that they use, and looking at the armor and thinking, would that suit me or not? Does it look good for my hunter? Does it work well for me? So really, I think when you start to play any game series, is looking at how others play. Would that suit my way of playing? Hack and slash and dodge and weave. So I guess I play a bit like a boxer, as I used that analogy earlier in this podcast. Is, for me, it's going in, hacking at the monster a fair bit, dodging and weaving, targeting certain parts of the body when they open up. So really, it's very much like a boxing match. I've enjoyed the game very much overall, and I really felt there's a great sense of achievement when you fight a big monster. And the longest one that I had, and I can't remember the monster's name, sadly, I keep on forgetting them because there's so much content and stuff that I'm still learning. And I fought a monster after 36 minutes out of 40 minutes of the time limit. And I was running out of time, and it said 5 minutes left, and I'm getting really nervous because I ran out of mega potions, and the health meter was running down, and the clock was ticking. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to get through this. I think I have to do this again. Another 40 minutes of fighting this one monster, and I just got it with about 4 minutes to spare, and just it is fighting each monster and beating a tough monster is a bit like finishing a game. Fighting a final boss. There's this sense of adrenaline, and first it's relief. It's like, oh, thank fuck, I've knocked this one down. But also a large amount of satisfaction that that you can carve up this monster. You get quest money for beating it if you haven't fainted a number of times, and that you can use that money and those monster items that you pick up from killing it to make armor and weapons and things like that. So all the armor and weapons that you forge is really all the hard work that you've done in this game so far. So I'm quite satisfied with it, and I think Capcom's done a great job with Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and I'm looking forward to continuing to play the game. So that's been the exciting part about Monster Hunter 4, and there's been my experiences about this game so far. So I guess it's a bit of a longer podcast than I expected, but I think the excitement, not only just beating the monster, but just all the different moves you can do, and working together with other hunters, and of course the mounting mechanism is an awesome thing. I've done a couple really cool mounts, and I remembered on the spider rebs and that, and I was charging forward towards this monster, and he jumps off, and I jump off to do a mount, and I literally land right on top of him, and I just do one stab, and he was defeated, and it was just like this, that's so amazing sort of moments. It was sort of like watching a Hollywood movie, and it kind of looks like sort of an action Hollywood movie when you're playing online and multiplayer, and you're standing in the background and you're seeing these three hunters just going at it, and the monster's jumping up and down, and he's going off to another section, and so there's a real sort of, I guess, a bit of a Skyrim feel to it, where there's a sense of epicness to it. And I think that's why it's so popular in Japan. And I think it's starting to catch on in the West now. I think people are starting to understand it. And it does take quite a few hours for it to click in. At first, it looks like it's very much a grindy type game. And it is, to a certain extent, yes. Because you do work very hard to get the armor and the weapons that you want, and moving up the quests. It's not easy, especially when you've started playing the series. So I've been pretty happy with the game, and I will continue to play this game as well as all the other games I've been trying to get through. And I'll be continuing to do online sessions and meeting people in real life, trying to get through this. And they've been my experiences as a noob, but we might do another podcast with other people who are G ranks, who actually have seen the game evolve over time, and getting their opinions on how Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate has lived up to its expectations, and how they feel the game has changed for the better or for the worst, and see if we can get some tips from them too, because I wouldn't mind some tips on working on these high ranks that I'm dealing with, because fighting two monsters at once is not fun at all. It's going to be pretty tough for me. So that is the show in its entirety, and getting a bit tired now speaking for this long. But I will see you next time, and have a good time gaming. I'll see you later on.